She came to my home while my husband was at work and looked me in the eye. My 3-week-old daughter asleep in the next room, and told me to rename my baby, or she would tell my husband he wasn't the father. I had done nothing wrong. The name I chose was Nissa, named for a mother I never got to meet. And somehow I was the one being asked to justify it. I need to take you back to the beginning, because without it, none of this makes any sense. I had given up on love, genuinely given up, when I met John. I was 32, he was 40, and what started as a single night turned into something neither of us had planned for or tried to stop. A few months later, we were at a courthouse with a yard full of his family, and I was wearing a dress I'd bought 2 days before. It sounds chaotic. It was, but it was also one of the happiest days of my life. John's mother, Sandra, walked into that chaos like she had always been there. I met her 2 days before the wedding, and I remember thinking, this is what a mother feels like. I had grown up without mine. My mom, Nissa, passed before I ever had the chance to know her. She had been everything my father spoke of with quiet reverence. She was the reason I carry the part of me I carry, and Sandra, somehow, stepped into that hollow place without being asked to. She planned my baby shower. She surprised me with a birthday party. She called to check on me during the 3rd trimester when I couldn't sleep and my ankles had swollen to something embarrassing. I trusted her completely. So when I went into labor a week early in mid-March, I wasn't scared. I knew the people surrounding me. My daughter arrived on March 19th, just after 2 in the morning, and the moment she was placed in my arms, I already knew what her name was. I had chosen Nissa, pronounced Nissa. It was a name my parents had considered for me before I was born, before they saw me and changed their minds. It was one step removed from my mother's name, close enough to mean something, far enough to be hers alone. I looked at my daughter's face, and she was Nissa. There was no other conversation to have. Sandra and her husband came to the hospital around lunchtime that same day. She held my daughter, took photos, told John how beautiful his baby was. She was warm, she was present. She said nothing about the name. I was exhausted in the way that only new mothers understand. The kind of tired that lives behind your eyes and makes everything feel slightly underwater. I didn't notice that she never said a word to me directly. I didn't notice that she hadn't once said Nissa out loud. I was holding my daughter and I was happy, and I didn't see it coming. They left. John texted his mother to share a photo, and then, according to him, she went off. He waited until we were home to tell me. He sat me down with the careful posture of a man delivering difficult news and told me his mother found the name offensive, that it was, in her words, slur-like, that it was disrespectful, that I should have asked her permission before choosing it. I want to be precise here, because precision matters. The name is Nissa. It is 2 letters different from a word that carries real weight and real pain in this country. I understand that. I am not dismissing that history. But Nissa is not that word. It never was. It is the name my parents almost gave me. It is 1 letter away from the name of the mother I never got to hold. John loved the name when I first told him. He told me it was beautiful. But that night, he asked me if this was a hill we were willing to die on. He slept on the couch. I spent the next few weeks hoping Sandra would soften. John eventually came around, told his mother it was a reasonable name and that the matter was settled. I thought it was over. It wasn't over. She came to my home on a Tuesday while John was at work. I answered the door, holding my daughter. She sat across from me at my own kitchen table and told me calmly that if I did not rename the baby, she would tell John the child wasn't his. I want you to sit with that for a moment. She had planned my baby shower. She had called me at midnight when I couldn't sleep, and she was now threatening to destroy my marriage with a lie. Over 2 letters. I cried. She left. And the moment the door closed behind her, I opened a group chat with her and my husband, and I typed out every word of what had just happened. My hands were not shaking. I was done being quiet. Sandra denied it, of course, every word of it. John didn't call her out the way I needed him to. Instead, he told me I was being overly sensitive. He told me the name wasn't worth the drama. And then, the sentence that cut the deepest, he told me it didn't matter anyway because I'd never even known my mother. I have replayed that moment more times than I can count. The way he said it, like my grief for a woman I never got to meet, was a technicality. Like losing you carry your whole life without a single memory to hold on to is somehow a lesser kind of loss. He slept out of the bed for another week after that. I sat with my daughter in the early mornings when she woke up hungry and the house was still dark, and I said her name out loud to her. Nissa? Nissa? The way it sounds in a quiet room when there's no one to argue with you about it. I had named her for someone who never got to hold me. That is not a small thing. That is not a drama. That is the only inheritance I had left to give. John came back to bed eventually. He told me he loved the name. He told me he always had. But his mother wasn't going to let it go, and he didn't know what to do with that. I told him I did. I was making dinner. Sandra was coming over, and I was not renaming my daughter. Whatever happened next was going to happen with Nissa's name exactly as it was. I set the table, I cooked. I let the evening be normal on the surface because I had learned in the weeks since my daughter was born that the quietest rooms are sometimes the most honest ones. Sandra came. We ate. I did not raise my voice once. I looked at her across the table and I said, clearly and without decoration, that my daughter's name was Nissa, that it honored a woman who deserved to be honored, and that the conversation was closed. Not cruel, not theatrical. Closed. John sat beside me. He didn't contradict me. Sandra left early. I don't know what she said to John afterward, and I didn't ask. I went to my daughter's room and stood over her crib for a long time in the dark. She was 3 weeks old, and she already had a name that meant something. That was enough for me. That was everything, actually. Some battles aren't about winning. They're about refusing to disappear. And I had spent enough of my life being quiet about the things that mattered most to me. If you were in my shoes, if you sat across that table from someone who had threatened to burn your marriage down over 2 letters, what would you have done? Would you have renamed her? Or held the line the way I did? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this story hits somewhere real, subscribe. I've got more like it.